Did you know that the 6th largest country, Australia, has 3 time zones? The largest country, Russia, has 11. And France, which is not even amongst the 10 largest countries, has, wait for it, 12. Yes, 12. That's more than any other country in the world. But closer home, the case is a little different. A lot different, in fact. India is the 7th largest country in the world. But despite being this huge, all parts of India follow a single time zone. And this single time zone comes with many problems. In 1904, if you traveled from Bombay to Calcutta, then you would have to adjust your watch by around 60 minutes. Because till then, India followed multiple time zones. And the Bombay and Calcutta time was approximately an hour apart. Cut to today. Today, India follows a single time zone, the Indian Standard Time. Now, to really understand this, we have to go back to the basics. This round thing is the Earth. As you can see, not every part of the Earth receives the same amount of sunlight at a given time. And because of this, we have divided our Earth into 24 different time zones. How? By using these imaginary standing lines called longitudes. And each of these is 15 degrees apart. These longitudes are used to decide the time of a place. Each of these longitudes is at an hour's difference from the other. So say it's 2 p.m. on this longitude, then 15 degrees west will be one time zone or 1 hour behind. So on this longitude, it will be 1 p.m. Now, to make things a little simple, all time zones are measured from a starting line. This line is known as the prime meridian. Time at the prime meridian is known as the coordinated universal time. Now that our basic geography is clear, let's return to the case of India. The Indian Standard Time is based on the 82.5 degree longitude, which is this line that passes through Mirzapur in Uttar Pradesh. This line is 5.5 hours ahead of the coordinated universal time. So the IST is always measured as 5.5 hours ahead of the UTC. But this has a problem, particularly because of the sunrise and sunset. In the eastern parts of India, like in Arunachal Pradesh, the sun rises and sets early. But the western parts, like Gujarat, see the sunrise and sunset comparatively late. And this difference is usually 2 hours. But the IST doesn't take this difference into consideration, and this creates a bunch of problems. First has to do with the poor sleep cycle. This is what happens. Schools and offices start at more or less the same time everywhere in India. But because the sun sets later in the western parts of India, people living in these regions get lesser sleep. This can affect their work efficiency, leading to poor performances in classes, dropouts, and eventually lower wages. And all this because of a single time zone. This paper by Cornell University uses data to explain this in great detail. It shows that in an area where sunset happens an hour late, there, children get to sleep 30 minutes less. So for example, there are 2 kids. One lives where sunset happens early at 6 p.m. and the other where sunset happens an hour late at 7 p.m. Then this kid will get 30 minutes less sleep. And if this is the case every day, imagine the insane number of sleeping hours that a child loses. In fact, the paper also tells us that an hour's delay in annual average sunset time reduces children's education by almost a year. And this, in the long run, can be very harmful to the future of the children living in the western regions of India. But of course, this affects some people worse than others. Evidence suggests that children of poor families may lose an extra 7 minutes per night compared to other children living in the same areas. And that, in total, is a lot of sleep lost. Then there is the problem of electricity wastage. Sun rises early in the eastern parts of India as compared to the west. But because we follow a uniform time, offices and schools open too late, and thus a lot of natural sunlight is wasted. In winters, this problem becomes even worse. As the sun sets early, more electricity has to be consumed to keep life active during the later hours. So here is the gist. Because of the single time zone, we see a loss of sleep, lack of productivity, poor education, lower wages, wastage of natural resources, and extra usage of electricity. All of this because of a single time zone. So what can we do to combat this? This research suggested something interesting. It said that advancing the Indian Standard Time by just half an hour would result in an annual savings of 2.7 billion units of electricity in India. So if the IST was 6 hours ahead of the UTC, instead of the current 5.5 hours, then a lot of energy would be saved. In fact, this is not the only suggestion that has been made with regards to changing the Indian Standard Time. A 2019 study suggested that if India switches from the existing single time zone to 2 time zones, then our GDP would increase by over 0.2% annually, which equals to an annual human capital gain of over $4.2 billion. In fact, the official organization responsible for keeping time in India has also suggested 2 time zones. One for most of India and the other for the 8 eastern parts of the country. There would be a 1-hour difference in both these time zones. Now what's interesting is that an example of this can already be found in Assam's Chaibagann Time. Several tea gardens of the state have long set their clocks 1 hour ahead of IST. This functions as their informal time zone. However, officially changing the time zone or creating 2 time zones for the entire nation is not an easy business. Doing this can lead to many administrative difficulties. In such a situation, regional solutions can be of immense help. Starting schools and offices at a later time in the western regions can allow children and adults to compensate for later bedtimes. This can enable them to get enough sleep to power through their day better. Whereas in the eastern parts, starting the day early can allow us to better utilize the natural resources and lower our energy consumption. Time zones are an interesting yet complex phenomenon, and Nutshell loves to explore such topics. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the video and what other topics you would want us to pick up. And don't forget to like and share this video.